Morning, this is Garrett. This is going to be video blog 015, if I can finish recording it. I've had interruptions the last two, and just decided to discard, not finish, not upload either one of those. And this one here, I might set my sights a little bit lower, narrow my focus, see if I can go a little harder, faster, better, stronger in knocking out the points that I'm wanting to get to today before I get interrupted. And so that way it's done, it's over with, and I hold the attention of my audience, all two of you, because I suppose that's the other side of the coin, right? Is I take a video, I may not get all the way through it because I get interrupted, and you watching the video, you may not get through it because you get interrupted. So if I can hit these points, maybe we'll both get something more out of it than the last two attempts. First thing I want to talk about today, Jimmy Kimmel did a little segment on his show about Americans who can't name a single book. And I don't just mean they can't name the last book that they read. I mean they can't read. They can't mention or name a single book, period. And I posted, shared this video segment that's circulating around on my Facebook, and a couple of people commented and said, keep in mind that this is Los Angeles, where Kimmel is recording, and that that doesn't represent the rest of the country. Not everybody is as poorly read, surely, and maybe that's true. I don't know. It's hard. I have no way of quantifying that. I don't know if the residents of Los Angeles are better or worse read, more or less literate than the rest of the country. I have no idea. And there's also the possibility, which somebody raised, which is that there were several other people that could name books, and very easily, and the editors just decided to include the people that hemmed and hawed because it would be funny to make fun of them, and everybody else that was able to name books and has been reading here recently, they were just cut out. And that's possible too. I guess, who knows? I am curious though. I mean, you as a viewing audience, what was the last book that you read, or that you are reading right now? I think most of my friends and family are, they read. Some of them have told me that they don't read very often. They don't like to read. But it seems like the people I'm closest with, that I talk with the most often, are people who read. Because it's just a point of shared interest. I enjoy reading. I have for as long as I can remember, and there's just so many things you can learn and experience vicariously in reading a good book. The world is your oyster if you can find a way to enjoy reading and find a certain type of book that you enjoy reading, because they're not all the same. I think the greatest disservice we can do for our children is, barring the possibility that you wouldn't teach them to read, so narrowly defining what's valuable knowledge and learning, that the kinds of books that interest them wouldn't qualify, and they wouldn't count that as being even worth their time. If you're reading Lord of the Rings, on the one hand I could say that it's not real. Lord of the Rings is not true history of the earth. If you're reading Isaac Asimov, that's not true future necessarily, hopefully, in some cases, for humanity. But there's ideas, there's concepts, very rich themes that you can pick up on in the work of a J.R.R. Tolkien or an Isaac Asimov that can really get your imagination going. It can get your mind thinking in new and helpful ways about the world around you. And and then if a book on zoology interests your kid, get him some books on zoology. Get him books on animals. If they want to read about the history of I don't know, just Legos or whatever. I mean, get them a book on the history of Legos. I mean, whatever interests them, within reason, as long as it's not morally bankrupt and going to teach them to be a reprobate. Get them books, get them reading, get your kids reading, encourage them to read. If you say, well, they don't really like reading, they like watching TV and playing video games. So do my kids. And I like watching them play video games and watching them watching TV with them. We watched Black Panther last night, and very original movie, really interesting. Movies can be also very rich source of inspiration and ideas. There's a whole art to cinematography. You got to be careful because some movies are absolute frou-frou and junk, and there's no substance to them whatsoever. They're just supposed to hit all the right buttons, push all the right buttons on you to get you to come and buy a ticket, and they have no redeeming value whatsoever. There's some movies that should never have been made, even if they are slightly funny, even if they do have some moments, they weren't worth being made, and they shouldn't have been made. And so also with even children's programming, just because it's made for kids doesn't mean that it should have been made at all, and it doesn't mean that your kids should watch it. There's this movie, I guess it just came out, some animal movie. Let's see if I could find the link that I sent my wife. So a gal from church had shared this heads up article talking about one of the disturbing elements of this movie. And my kids, they watch, especially my oldest son enjoys movies about animals. All my kids enjoy movies about animals, and so they watch all kinds of stuff on Netflix. And there's certain things that we've said, hey, we don't want you watching that. No, you can't watch that. And there's certain other things that we walk through the room and we just like, this is not worth our time. How about we just turn that off, watch something else, or let's just not watch anything, because watching nothing would be better than this. But this Show Dogs movie, looks like an update as of yesterday. Actually, I read this article, sent it to my wife on Monday while we were in the hospital. I was waiting for the birth of my son John, and what else am I going to do? I'm sitting on my phone and talking with my wife, and we're watching HGTV, and I shared this article with her, and it's this Show Dogs movie. And one of the central themes of this Show Dogs movie is that part of being shown at a dog show is having your private parts touched. And so this undercover cop dog, it's one of the big things he supposedly needs to get over and get used to is strangers touching his private parts. And just weird and creeptastic. And it sounds like they worked it in several different times and made a big deal out of it, and it was just really disturbing. And the author of this article refers to this as grooming. You're basically conditioning uh, conditioning children to be accepting of being touched inappropriately, so that then they do not object to being molested or taken advantage of, assaulted, raped, what have you. Very disturbing that this would be in theaters, and this would be billed as a movie for children. Well, it looks like as of yesterday, Global Road Entertainment, which must have been the people that made this movie, announced they will pull Show Dog's movie from theaters and re-edit it to remove the offensive scenes. They shouldn't have been in there to begin with, right? I mean, come on, like, seriously? It's a disturbing reality that we would even need to be watching out for that in children's programming, but it's the truth. We watched Black Panther last night. I really enjoyed it. It's rated PG-13, I suppose, for violence. I don't know. I don't think that. I think we're in danger of raising a generation of pansies and wimps if you can't show somebody getting punched or shot, or two people sword fighting. You can't show that to kids. I mean, that's there's limits, obviously. There's a certain level at which violence becomes gratuitous, but no, we don't want to shelter our kids from the fight of good versus evil, heroes versus villains. So I watched the movie with my kids. Those that wanted to watch it, not all of them wanted to watch it. Some of them thought it was a little bit too intense, and so they made the choice to go do something else and to go hang out with Mom and John. And Evelyn didn't have any interest whatsoever, because I guess she thought it was a boy movie. And if it was a girl movie and there were some pink, then she might have watched it. But I tried to watch Wonder Woman with all my kids, with my daughter included. I think Evelyn was the only one that didn't really want to watch it. All my boys, they thought it was great. They thought it was the best movie ever. Wonder Woman's fantastic. And I don't know. Anyway, even so, I mean, both Wonder Woman and Black Panther, there's little things that are slipped in here and there where you have to take it with a grain of salt. You got to be prepared to walk your children through what's being communicated, and it's not as simple as sex and violence. You can't be two-dimensional and just say, well, as long as everybody keeps their clothes on and I don't see a bunch of guts, somebody being disemboweled in a really detailed way, then what's the big deal? There's ideas. I would say the thing you have to watch out the most for is ideas, and it's important to, whatever your kids are watching, be aware of the ideas that are being communicated, and train yourself to be able to spot the underlying message of a movie. And that isn't to say necessarily, when you can see some concerning elements, that means you shouldn't let your kids watch it. I think that's a judgment call, from parent to parent, that needs to be made, from child to child, that needs to be made differently. But I think there can be a great deal of value in exposing your children to even bad ideas, and if you need to pause the movie at a certain point to say, okay guys, what just happened there, that scene, you got to be careful there. That was some positive association with something that is not so positive. We don't want to be thinking positively about that, but the director, the scriptwriter, the producer, they were all very artful in conveying something to try and change your feeling, to change your thinking about what it is that they want you to feel positive about. So also, you can have negative connotations. You could have something that is a good deal, it's a good thing, and you present it in such a way, you play sinister music, and you can influence the way that people feel about it. If you juxtapose, let's say, my wife was watching some show about chefs, these really advanced chefs. There's some show on Netflix. It might be Chef's Table. Is that a show? I don't know. But I walked in, and she's kind of resting, and we've got a TV up in her room, and so she's watching this chef's show, and taking care of John, and I was just amazed. I mean, the amount of attention that goes into sometimes these very small dishes, and they're prepared just so, and the plating. That's one whole aspect of presenting this dish, of preparing a dish, is how are you going to put it on the plate in an attractive way? You're going to drizzle your sauce, or you're going to, stage this thing, and it might not be that much food. It's a small portion, but a lot of attention is gone. It goes into what plate are you going to use, how are you going to arrange everything, how are you going to put it on there gently, delicately, purposefully. And you imagine you just slap it on there. That's the stereotypical opposite end of the spectrum, as you're walking through the cafeteria line at a school, and the school cook takes a big ladle of some unrecognizable slop and just puts that on your plate. All right, go sit and eat it. And that's not appetizing. But you can have things that would otherwise be a great idea look awful unappetizing if they're just slopped on there. And and you can have things that are actually not that great for you look just absolutely fantastic if a lot of care and attention is put into presenting them in a positive light. And music is one major thing. There's one example I like to use. It's a scene from Star Wars where they're on the Death Star, I think, and this shuttle comes in, and it's carrying Darth Vader, and it lands, and there's all these stormtroopers lined up, ready to greet. They're standing at attention, ready to greet Lord Vader as he comes in. And so then the gangplank comes down, and down comes Darth Vader, and he is walking through these lines. He's going to greet some of the officers, or they're going to greet him. They all look nervous, and you can tell there's this sense of dread that if they don't meet his expectations, he's been known to, kill anybody that displeases him. And in the original film, the music that is played in this scene is the Imperial March. Dun 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 dun. And John Williams, this composer who wrote, conducted the music for Star Wars, just brilliant, absolutely an artist. He is a chef of the first degree when it comes to movie soundtracks. And this music builds this sense that this Darth Vader guy, he is an important character, and this is a very serious occasion, and the Empire is a force to be reckoned with, and all that. And the music, with the way that the movie, the scene is shot, it really builds this sense of, Darth Vader should be taken seriously. And even the officers and the stormtroopers are very obviously in, a serious frame of mind about Darth Vader. And what's funny is there's a somebody took that scene and they changed the music to it, and this is the music that they play on that scene. And it's hilarious, yeah, but it makes such a difference, such a difference in your perception. It makes it sound like, this officer is nervous because he's in love with Darth Vader or whatever, you know, and totally changes the feel of the movie. You could take it from being a serious moment to being something absurd, and you could make fun of Darth Vader and the whole Empire. You just change the music, and that's just one element. There's so many other things to change. You can change the costuming, you can change the lighting, uh, everything. So there's a whole science to cinematography, and I think we do well to be aware of that science, to study it. If you're going to watch movies, to be aware of what is being communicated in movies, to be able to spot those messages. And as a parent, not to totally protect your children from uh, the subtle crafting of narratives, which happens in movies. Don't protect them by keeping them away from it, but protect them by giving them the knowledge to be able to unpack those worldviews, giving them the filter and the rubric with which to discern truth from falsehood, good from evil, in films, in movies. And they can ask, hey, is this good? Is this right? Is this true? Or not? And then judging accordingly. Is a movie a good movie based on an objective standard? Or does it just make you feel good and you couldn't possibly explain why or how, or whether it should make you feel good? So anyway, but Jimmy Kimmel, Americans Who Can't Name a Single Book. I just think that is tragic. What are we doing with all that time that we're not spending reading, and why are we not reading? If truth is subjective, maybe that's why people are not reading. What's true for you is true for you. What's true for me is true for me. And if I don't feel like reading a book right now, and if the author, he's just giving his opinion, well, I can just have my own opinion. I don't need to listen to anybody else's opinion. My opinion is just as valid as theirs, without being exposed to the book. And it doesn't matter how much or little I know, how well informed my opinion is, because truth is not a value, and truth doesn't exist even. And if that cultural mindset of postmodernism, of a post-truth society that we live in, if that's why people are not reading, that makes some sense. But especially as Christians within the church, I think it behooves us to read, to be voracious readers, to study to show ourselves approved workmen that need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And that first starts with God's word. His word is truth. He is the truth. But it doesn't. It's not. It includes, but is not limited to, the Bible. I think it's important for us to whatever it is that God's gifted us with, to be interested in, to be talented in, to study, to be skillful in our approach to that, to be understanding and discerning in our approach to that thing, not to be ignorant. Ignorance is not a virtue. It may be bliss, but it's folly. Ignorance is folly, and it leads to pain, and pain diminishes pleasure. You may be being ignorant for a time enhances pleasure, but in the long run, you have to pay the piper, and there are consequences to not paying attention, and to not thinking, and to not engaging the world of the real. So anyway. Another thing I want to talk about today, I meant to talk about it yesterday, really gets my goat. Donald Trump, President Trump, for those that were not aware, he did win the presidency, so he is president. He is your president. He's my president. Donald Trump made some remarks this past week or two in answer to a question by a reporter. What was oh, I don't even remember what the question was now, but it was very specifically the journalist who was asking it, the reporter who was asking it, very specifically said gang members. Was asking about violent gang members coming into the U.S. from outside of the country, coming illegally and then doing illegal things. Once here, doing illegal things regarding human trafficking, regarding drugs, violent crime, etc., etc. And Trump's response to that, in his response to that, he likened these people to animals. And he said that they're the worst people and they're getting them out of there in numbers you wouldn't believe, and they do things you wouldn't believe. And he called them animals. And the dishonest media in this country took Trump's response out of context without including the original question, which very clearly and explicitly says gang members, and they tried to just blast Trump from every direction, from every angle possible. It was this artillery barrage of nonsense and dishonesty from all the talking heads on the left, in all their various flavors and all their channels, in all their publications, blasting President Trump for being a racist, for dehumanizing language, for fascist language, and tried to make it sound like he was saying all immigrants, all undocumented residents or undocumented citizens or whatever retarded thing they're calling illegal immigrants now. As if he was calling them all animals. When it's very obvious he was talking about the gangs, specifically the gangs, and specifically MS-13. And so the White House, their Facebook page actually published this thing, what you need to know about violent animals of MS-13. It's on whitehouse.gov. And I didn't even click through and read it. I feel like I know enough about MS-13 to approve of them being referred to as animals. It's stronger language. If there were stronger language to condemn their actions, I would be in favor of that too. If you're unfamiliar, MS-13, if you cross them, they will cut your head off and leave your decapitated body in the middle of a road as a warning sign to everybody and their brother not to cross MS-13. They might do the same to your entire family and leave your entire family in the road. They skin people and leave their skin as a present for somebody, just to let them know, hey, same could happen to you if you don't do what we want. They do the most violent, barbaric things as a matter of course. And I think it's to the level that it's like they get together and they say, what would be the most evil, awful, horrible, cruel thing that we could possibly do to build up our reputation as being this criminal enterprise? And so then they put their heads together and they watch some horror movies and then they go do that. And that's how they contrive with their game plan. MS-13, just absolutely an abominable organization. We do not want a single person associated with MS-13 in the world, if we can manage it, but certainly not in this country, which our government is at a bare minimum responsible to protect. They're not responsible to give you birth control, and they're not responsible to protect you if you want to go abort your baby. But they are, at a bare minimum, responsible to keep MS-13 type people out of this country and to deal with them in the strongest possible terms if they get in here and they start acting like MS-13 does. Deportation is too good, in my opinion, for MS-13. But the mainstream media and even these people that were commenting on the whitehouse.gov share to Facebook, they're absolute loons. commenting about, yeah, even if he was just referring to MS-13, you don't call people animals. Man, emotion. Then all it is they don't like Donald Trump. They hate Donald Trump, and they're looking for anything possible that they could try and destroy him with. That's all it is. And I'm reading this, and I'm thinking to myself, good morning. I'm reading this, and I'm thinking to myself, what is the big deal about calling people animals? I mean, really. For one, let's take it from the secular humanist evolutionary worldview. Aren't we all animals? If Darwin was right, isn't that effectively what you're teaching kids from little on up in the public schools? Isn't that what everybody who has some kind of bona fides in the scientific community, isn't that what Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson are always making fun of us about? That we think we're created by God, us stupid Christians. We think that God rules this universe when it really is just evolution and natural processes. We're just animals. I'm confused what the objection is to Trump referring to MS-13 as animals if evolution is true. Jordan Peterson writes in his first chapter for 12 Simple Rules for Life, he writes about the wren and how territorial these birds are, these little cute little birds. And he writes about lobsters at the bottom of the ocean floor, how territorial lobsters are, and their little brains respond to hormones in victory and defeat very much the same way that ours do, and how we're evolved from a common ancestor. Lobsters have been around for 300 million years, supposedly. And we're evolved from a common ancestor. And that's what evolution teaches. Well, in what moral framework do you say we are animals, we're descended from the same ancestors, we're descended from a common ancestor with the chimps, the gorillas, and everything else, if you go back far enough, but you're going to object to Donald Trump referring to MS-13 as animals? You didn't think before you said that, did you? You just not put two and two together there. And so somebody might turn around. They might say, now wait a second. We want to be animals when it's convenient. We don't want to be treated like animals in all the bad ways. Lobsters. In Peterson's book, he talks about these territorial lobsters where they'll posture and they'll hold their claws up and they'll puff themselves up and try and look as big of a lobster as they can. If some other male is coming into your territory, you as the male in your territory, I'll let you know I'm ready to fight, and you don't want to mess with me. Get some of this, and and if they do come to fighting, they'll grab hold of whatever they can on the other lobster. They'll grab hold of an eye socket, they'll grab hold of an antenna, they'll grab hold of an arm, and they'll pinch it, and then they jet back, and they try to wrench and rip off whatever part of the other lobster they can get a hold of. And obviously, that's unpleasant for you if you're having your eye stalk or your antenna ripped off. And so, a lobster can be either, wounded for life and never recover from a fight with another lobster, or they could die and be so weak that they're just not going to be any match for the next, or the next, or the next, and then you just die. Well, okay, if we're descended from a common ancestor, what, except for an arbitrary made-up standard based on your feelings, do you have to object if people start doing that to one another? They start ripping parts off each other, like MS-13. MS-13 is acting like animals. They're acting like territorial lobsters at the bottom of the ocean, ripping pieces off of one another if they get into your territory. If some rival gang comes in and they want to disrupt your drug trade in what you consider to be your territory, then you just rip pieces of them off and you leave them as a reminder to everybody else. Posture. You make yourself. That's what they're doing. You know, maybe some of them just get off on being as cruel and monstrous as they possibly can, but it's also a way of them posturing to everybody else, letting them know, you don't want to fight with us. We're the big lobster, you know, collectively. And so that from that standpoint, I don't understand the objection. It's not intellectually honest. It doesn't make sense. It's stupid. Now, a Christian. Okay, so let's look at it from the other angle. You got some Christianity mixed in there, and you're going to say, as a Christian, you don't appreciate this dehumanizing language. We are made in the image of God, and as such, we have inherent value, worth, and dignity, and it's inappropriate to disregard that and start likening us to animals. I can sympathize. I'm the closest to sympathizing with that view, and yet I think it behooves us to remember 2 Peter 2, chapter 2, verses 10 through 13. The Apostle Peter writes, "Bold and willful they do not tremble as they blaspheme the glorious ones, whereas angels, though greater in might and power, do not pronounce a blasphemous judgment against them before the Lord. But these, like irrational animals, creatures of instinct, born to be caught and destroyed, blaspheming about matters of which they are ignorant, will also be destroyed in their destruction, suffering wrong as the wage for their wrongdoing. They count it pleasure to revel in the daytime. They are blots and blemishes, reveling in their deceptions while they feast with you." Scripture, all Scripture is God-breathed and suitable for doctrine, for instruction into righteousness. Peter, an apostle, walked with Jesus for 3 years, authoring Scripture, writes, comparing people to irrational animals, creatures of instinct, born to be caught and destroyed, which, by the way, I think is a much more fitting way to deal with MS-13, if I'm honest. I think they should be caught and destroyed. Why would we deport them, send them back to the countries they came from, and then you're just going to do, I mean, that's not really very nice to Mexico or wherever else they're from. Yeah, I mean, if they're doing the kinds of things that MS-13 is known for, I think the old Western justice of a noose and a tree sounds pretty good. And somebody's going to object to that. They're going to say, "Well, no, that's not right. How could you possibly say that? That's dehumanizing language, and that's that's racist." No, it's not racist. No, it's not. I guess Ray Comfort, he's got this video that just came out. I haven't seen it. My dad was telling me about it. Where they go around and they're asking young people today, they're asking millennials and younger, and you present them with somebody who's a mass murderer or a school shooter, and you ask, is that evil? And these kids, they can't for the life of them say that anybody or anything is evil. Well, if you taught them to be animals and you taught them that their feelings are all that matter, well, they don't want to let that worldview slip. They don't have any replacement because you've barred Christian teaching, Christian thought from the public schools. You've barred the Christian worldview. You've kept it out. It's the policy, it's the rule. The consequences for violating that are severe and well known, well documented. To be fair to these kids, how are they supposed to account for evil when we're just animals, when we're just lobsters ripping eye stalks off of each other when we go into the wrong territory? How are they supposed to tell that MS-13 is evil? You've stripped from them any ability to judge and measure good and evil, except for their feelings. And I bet you anything, you take one of these kids who's been on the receiving end of that, and they've seen it up close, and they've had people that they knew and loved destroyed by that. All of a sudden they develop a sense of good and evil because their feelings got involved. They had personal experience. And that's what we've elevated. We've elevated personal experience and feelings. Going back to the Jimmy Kimmel thing, all these Americans who haven't read a book, and they can't name the last book they read except for Dr. Seuss when they were very, very little. I am absolutely appalled by all the conversations and discussions I've had or tried to have with friends and family, and how many of them now won't even talk with me. They probably have me blocked on Facebook. If Facebook isn't censoring me, my friends and family have decided to censor me. I just don't want to see that stuff in my feed anymore. Garrett's, he's just a nuisance. I don't like the way I feel when I read and listen to what he's saying, and I don't want him to see my stuff. One friend of mine from high school, I would have never dreamt. Here you're probably thinking this is all, these godless atheists, these people that are, really liberal, who would do this. No, he was somebody I thought of as being, the strongest of Christians, the most mature or spiritual of Christians. Well, the problem was he went off to a liberal school, and then he got into teaching, and then he decided that I was a dangerous influence to his kids, as in the kids that he was going to be friends with, that he taught, that were on his Facebook, and their parents. He didn't want them seeing me commenting on things that he was posting and having my view and sharing my view. That was really offensive and scary for him, and it was going to be scary for them. And so he let me know he was not going to allow me to comment on things anymore, and he didn't want me even seeing. He was going to restrict my being able to see the things that he shared. And that's profoundly disturbing. Especially, it's a chicken and an egg question with Facebook censoring people. If they're telling me that they're relying on the community to give them feedback on certain voices that shouldn't be heard, are they looking at people that have unfriended me, blocked me, limited the privacy settings to where I can't see what they are sharing? Are they looking at that, and then somewhere down the road, all you people that allowed your feelings to get in the way, you elevated your feelings along with the rest of society to this high and lofty place that only God should occupy, and you shut me out because I was saying things that you didn't want to hear. How's that going to make you feel if somewhere down the road I don't have a voice because you silenced it? You gave Facebook, you were the informant saying, hey, this guy needs to not have a voice anymore. It's appalling. Appalling to think about. But before it gets to the point of people unfriending me, blocking me, what have you, I try to have a civil discourse, and I try to very patiently, very calmly, very gently say, okay, read this book, read this book, read this book. I've read more books than I can count, and I can tell you, it's in this one, it's in this one, it's in this one. There's a support for this idea, there's a support for this idea. I watch documentaries while I'm folding the laundry. I listen to audiobooks all the time when I'm driving around. I read voraciously. I read the news voraciously. And if you have read something which challenges what I'm saying, or if you have a good rational argument that challenges what I'm saying, then make your case. But I am amazed, I am dumbfounded and appalled how often, even with teachers, that the response was not, you make a good point, but here is a scholarly academic response. I think you're mistaken. I think you have not considered this. You didn't factor that in. I think you forgot to carry the one. Whatever. If you read so-and-so, then you'll see that this is another piece of the puzzle that you're missing, without which you can't really understand the bigger picture. No. In the one friend that blocked me and told me he was going to block me, It was experience and feelings. And he was unashamed about it. He thought that's totally normal. Well, of course, what else would I use to weigh and measure whether whether I'm going to listen to what you have to say? My experience and feelings. So objective, universal truth, not important. Your feelings, very important. And if your feelings don't like objective truth, boy howdy, that decides it right there. And if I'm bringing objective truth, and you're bringing your feelings, and your feelings more important than objective truth, for the sake of your feelings, you'll just shut me out. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And it's happened many other times. He was the only one who had the decency at least to tell me he was doing it. And I appreciate that. That at least helped me put two and two together with some other people, with several other people. I've had people unfriend me because I questioned, this one time I questioned, how could anybody be a Democrat and a Christian? How could you vote Democrat and be a Christian? How can anybody support abortion and be a Christian? I questioned that and lost some friends. Had people unfriend me and block me. One case I had somebody unfriend me because I questioned the veracity of a friend of theirs. And it was a discussion about the Iraq War, the Iraq and Afghanistan War, the War on Terror. And this friend of mine, I think he's a doctor now, her PhD, studied philosophy, professor. And so he teaches. He's teaching at the university level. And he shared something, posted something to Facebook about Afghanistan and Iraq and the wars over there. And it was something critical of Bush, critical of the War on Terror. Some friend of his that I didn't know from Adam commented on it and was upset about it as well. And they were on the same page, it looked like. And I chimed in with a dissenting view. And I took the unpopular position that the War on Terror was a good fight, that we should have gone in there, and that there were weapons of mass destruction. There's evidence that there were weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein had. It wasn't a farce, and the facts have borne that out in the years since. Even liberal publications have come out and said we were wrong actually about George Bush. He was right. There were weapons of mass destruction. Oops, here we were calling him a liar and a war criminal and saying that he was going in there for no good reason and making stuff up and deceiving the world, and we were wrong. We have to retract that. He was right. And so I chimed in. That's all irrelevant. I chimed in with a dissenting view, and this and I'm trying to have a back and forth. And this friend of my friends makes some really snide remark about how he's tired of getting notifications on this discussion every time I comment back. Even though he's dropped out of the conversation, he wants the conversation to be over, so he stops getting notifications. And he says it in this really smug, condescending way, as if this is not even worth his time to look at his phone and see that we're continuing on the discussion. And so I made a remark back about how hey, you stated your opinion, and you're ready to be done with the discussion once a contrasting view is shared. Like, that's kind of, I'm not done talking about this. If you want to be done talking about it, you can be done talking about it. But I think it's kind of, maybe doesn't speak well to the integrity of your position or the justification for it if you're ready to just drop the topic at the first sign of disagreement or a challenge or a question. And this friend of mine that I actually knew just came out. I mean, just, how dare you question the veracity of my friends? And that, just like that, we were no longer friends on Facebook. And I was down the river and not to be associated with anymore. And so I'm dismayed. Both of those guys, teachers, both of those guys, I thought of as being, among the more mature, heads on straight, clean-cut Christians that I knew in high school. The friends of mine, and I would not have imagined that even they, when it came down to it, have fallen into and succumbed to this lie that dissent devalues other people, that disagreement devalues other people, that we can't disagree without it attacking the other person. And bought into this lie that feelings are preeminent, and that our feelings override even objective truth and critical thinking, and that they should, and you should use your feelings to silence other people's critical thinking and their free speech. If you don't like what they have to say, or if it offends your pride, or if you just want to wave around your academic credentials, whether you're a teacher or you've gone and you've gotten an advanced degree, you've spent all this money on this education, and you've gotten the powers that be to sign off on you that you know your stuff. And who's this Garrett guy who comes in and he thinks that he has the right to challenge you and question you? No, we can't have that. No. Get out of here. What needs to happen, though, to turn it around, is we need to value truth. Truth. And we need to see truth as the cure for what ails us. Black Panther. You have two responses. You've got the response of this Killmonger, the villain of the story, and here he's the cousin. He's one of the potential heirs to the throne of Wakanda, and he wants to take all the great technology of Wakanda and outsource it to all of the oppressed black people all over the world, give them the means with which to rise up and take over every nation in which they reside all over the world. And then Wakanda basically takes over the world thereby. That's his vision, because he grew up an angry young black man. His father ends up trying to kill his uncle, and is killed in the process, and he grows up very bitter and resentful that his father was killed and that he grew up an orphan, and he wants to take over the world for Wakanda and for black people. And he's into this black power stuff for which the real life Black Panthers are famous. And the alternative view of the hero, the real Black Panther in the movie, his view is at the very end, why don't we share technology? We're going to share our research and development with the rest of the world. We're going to stop hiding ourselves as pretending to be a third world country, and we'll let it be known. We'll drop the veil. Let it be known that we actually are this super advanced nation, and we have been this whole time. We've got very advanced medical technology, for instance, and we're going to reach out into inner city communities. He buys up a whole block worth of buildings in the neighborhood that his cousin, the villain Killmonger, had grown up in. He buys up all of these buildings, and he's going to establish a science and technology exchange with the rest of the world, and start in a community in an inner city like that. He's going to share knowledge, share some of the amazing technological developments that they have. Well, what is that predicated on? If Wakanda in that story has, if they have, they've discovered things about how the universe works, and how the world works, and they want to let the rest of the world know that. They want to empower people of color, apparently, which is fine. It's great. I have no issue with that. They want to empower people of color by giving them knowledge and giving them tools with which to, practice medicine, heal people. Fantastic. And that's how you're going to rise up out of poverty, out of squalor, out of desperation and crime. That's a great approach. That's fantastic, but it's predicated on there being such a thing as truth. If science and technology, the development of, researching new devices, new medical procedures, new whatever, is all predicated on there being such a thing as truth. And by contrast, you've got the villain of the story. He wants to export weapons and to take over the world through violent force. Now, he is speaking from a place of emotion primarily. His emotion is a negative emotion, and he doesn't care who he kills, who he hurts, who he destroys in the process, because he just wants to feed his emotions. His emotions have become the standard of right and wrong, of good and evil, of what's going to happen. And I think it behooves us to take that as a cautionary tale, even if it wasn't meant as one. The path forward is not just emotions. And you imagine, you can't tell the villain in this story that what he's doing or what he's proposing is evil, or that it's wrong, or that it's not going to work, or that's not a good idea, or it's going to be self-destructive. You can't tell him that. Well, what's left but to fight, to have a war, or to have one or the other just destroyed and kicked to the curb and marginalized? It's ridiculous that Americans wouldn't see the need to read. We have more books at our fingertips. We have more information and knowledge at our fingertips than probably any people ever. And we spend so much of our resources and time on meaningless drivel and being passive, not engaging our minds, and fleeing and opposing and being upset with and angry with anybody that makes us think and challenges our ideas, challenges us to something more meaningful and better. No. It's just we can't be that way. We can't afford to be that way. That's a self-destructive, self-defeating way to be. So, I think that's all I've got for today. Right about at the 1 hour mark, which is that's par for my course. That's where I've ended up on all the rest of these videos. Pretty much is 45 minutes to an hour. I tried a 21 minute 42-second video the other day talking about my career in the oil and gas industry, and it was all right. It was okay. Kind of weird cutting it that short. It was one topic, came in about 20 minutes, and then I thought, well, I'm going to try and take another 20-minute video, see if I can fill out my day, because it felt too short. So I took another video out in the field talking about Jordan Peterson's 12 Simple Rules and the Bible, and I was going to have that be 20 minutes, and it ended up being 57 minutes. So, kind of funny. Obviously, since this is my next video blog, I haven't done my interview yet with our local candidate for House District 35 in Montana. Hoping to, tonight I'm going to write up a list of questions, things that I want to ask. So I plan to have that conversation, write out the answers, and discuss that, talk about that this next time around. But I'll leave it there for right now. Have a good morning, have a good day, and let me know your thoughts. If you got books you'd recommend I read, please share. If you disagree with anything I'm saying, please share. You can, if you have a challenging perspective on what I'm saying that I haven't considered, then whether you're right or I'm right, at the end of the day, I still think there's a value in my looking at things from another perspective, and either sharpening and refining my ideas, clarifying them, or else coming to with changing my thoughts to ideas that are more correct. Either way, there's a benefit if I'm willing to go through that process. It's to my benefit, everybody's benefit. So anyway, please share. And also too, it looks like I've got 2 subscribers. I'm curious who those 2 subscribers are. I think one of them I know who it is. The other one I'm not sure. Please hit like on the video if you liked what I said. Hit dislike if you disliked it. Hit subscribe and subscribe to my channel. It'll be a huge encouragement to me. So anyway, thanks. Have a good day.